Wednesday afternoon, everybody. Welcome back down to my library. And today, I'm finally going to give you the 10 books that I managed to read in August. So this is going to be my August wrap up. And I gotta tell you, August was primarily horror for me. So I've read from 3 different mediums like I usually do: physical, audio, and Kindle. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into all of the books that I read for August. Got my handy dandy notebook here, and let's get started. The first book I completed in August was one of 6 Books of Horror Indie Brawl contenders. You're going to see a lot of those in this video. But that first one I completed was The Odds by Jeff Strand. And this one was a pretty solid story. This was about a man who discovered this mysterious game, and all he had to do was complete a very twisted task, one after the other, to win $1 million. And it gets to the point where his family is in trouble and he's in trouble. So it's a pretty good bets off kind of horror novel. So anything could happen. I rated this 4 stars. Moving on from there is probably one of my favorite contenders for the Books of Horror Indie Brawl. That was Cadaverous by Jay Bauer. And this was about an up-and-coming metal band that became famous because the lead guitarist, I believe it was, he made a deal with like the devil in a way. So this starts off where he is attending the Ozzy Osbourne concert that happened during the eclipse in 2017 in Illinois. Not to mention, this almost feels like a very local book to me, because Jay Bauer is from the outskirts of St. Louis, and he just like named off like Pops and the Delmar Loop. I'm like, dude, it's where I'm from. But it almost kind of had like cosmic horror to it, and ultimately he falls in love with like this girl, and she turns out to be even darker than he was. She actually has him commit murder to appease this demonic entity. So, very fun, but very brutal, heavy metal horror novel. Definitely my thing, and probably one of the front runners for my favorite Books of Horror Indie Brawl contender. Moving on from there is my first physical book that I did complete, but I did not read this thing in a month. But this is Hearts in Atlantis by Stephen King. No, I started this in July, but I decided to finish the rest of it in August. But this is a novella collection that interweaves the Vietnam War. And I made a video about this, so if you want my full but scatterbrained thoughts on this, check that out. But this one was just okay to me. It's massive. And I feel like a lot didn't really go on in here. But I know that it is Dark Tower related. But unfortunately, some of that stuff happens in the later installments. So a lot of it went over my head. But I think my favorite story out of this one was probably the title story. They were playing this card game, but they were also reminiscing about being in Vietnam. So there's a lot of 60s culture in here, and protests and just anti-war propaganda. It was okay. It's not a new favorite of mine, but I gave this 3 stars. That was Hearts in Atlantis by Stephen King. And not to mention, that was my 43rd Stephen King book that I've read. More to come. But moving on, I completed another physical book. Look at me. This was The Crow Special Edition by James O'Barr, and this was based on the 1994 cult classic of the same name. There we go. So, this is just a graphic novel with a ton of pictures, and it's a very simple story of revenge. So, when you're looking at present day, it looks more hand-drawn. But when you look at the flashbacks, it's kind of more like a pastel pencil drawing. And I absolutely love this. It's an easy 5-star. But I didn't tell you what it was about. So, Eric Draven was murdered in cold blood, and his fiance followed suit. So, 1 year later, Eric Draven comes from the grave, and he exacts revenge by the power of the Crow. The movie is fantastic. The remake, not so much. But I really did enjoy this story. I only read it in like 2 sittings. So, that was The Crow by James O'Barr. Moving on. Okay. Book number 5 was Slash Tag by John Cone. Yet another Books of Horror brawl contender. And this one was kind of interesting, I'll tell you what. So, this was about a faux reality horror TV show that's set in like a haunted hotel. So it gathers like the 7 influencers or whatever, and they fight to survive. And is the game real or fake? Find out. But I ultimately gave this 4 stars. Moving on from there is my first Kindle read. I didn't read from my Kindle that much last month, but I did manage 2 of them. You'll see the other one here in a few minutes, but that one that I was talking about was Soul Searchers by Justin Boot. And another Books of Horror Indie Brawl contender. And this one went on the route of a haunted house story. So this new couple moves into this house, and they're being haunted by the spirits of this family who passed away there. Well, it turns out the husband of this family killed the mother and 2 kids brutally. Turns out he did not kill himself. So he was put into a mental asylum for his crimes. And this new couple finds out what actually happened to this family. It's actually kind of heartbreaking in a way, but you also have aspects of a psychic medium reaching the afterlife, and the soul searchers are the entities that get people into the afterlife properly. So those are what the soul searchers contend to. But I really did enjoy this story, and the author himself actually told me, thanks for reading. And he actually has a sequel in the works as well. So I'll be looking forward to that one when it comes out. But I gave this 4 stars. Next up is Through the Eyes of Desperation, the Red Version by Aaron Beauregard. Yes, that guy. And this one is probably the most stunning cover of the Books of Horror Indie Brawl. It just has a casino scene, and you just see an eyeball on a roulette table. And this one was extremely graphic and gross. But the next book in here is extremely graphic and gross. I'll get into that soon. But this one was about a man named Red who was down on his luck, and he's trying to win money for him and his ailing mother. So he comes across Shadows Casino, which is just this sinister gambling establishment that makes you not gamble with money. Oh no. You gamble with your life and your body parts. So there are some very sadistic casino games in here, and let's just say I really don't want to be cut in half from here to there, but that is a very messed up part in this. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But I really did dig this novel, and it was a pretty cool introduction to Aaron Beauregard. So I ultimately gave this 4 stars. The next one is probably his most famous novella, The Slob also by Aaron Beauregard. And this was about a very clean woman who recently got married to like a disabled veteran, and they start to like get their life together. She takes a saleswoman job, and she sells like this vacuum to like this disgusting man, and he just keeps her there hostage and does very unspeakable things to her. This thing was vile and very disgusting. So I ain't gonna repeat stuff that ever happened in this novel because I'll probably get flagged for that. But it's extreme horror. And I did give this one 3 stars. That was also through Audible. And the last 2 books I finished on Labor Day. So technically August, September wrap up. But I read most of these things in August, so I'm counting it. Leave me alone. But the next one I did complete was In the Tall Trees by Angel Van Atta. And this was part of the Little Voices duology. And this was about like a little girl who stays in this cabin with her mom and her baby brother. But she's also plagued by her father, which isn't really her father. No, he's just like an abusive man that just ruins her life. So it's a story about abuse, but I thought that this thing was very frustrating to get into because it is from the perspective of a child. The way that it was written, I'm not flagging the author for this, it was just kind of childish. I mean, I get the approach, but it did give me a headache. And it wasn't really horror, if you will, because nothing really happened in here except for like the abuse. But I thought it was just okay. I gave it 3 stars. And finally, the last book I did complete for August was Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell by Cameron Chaney. And this was a very, very fun book. Although it is very depressing and actually very gory at a couple parts. But it just screams Halloween. I mean, look at that cover. So this was about a teenage girl by the name of Bailey who has dreams of this nightmare boy, and turns out the nightmare boy might actually be not who she thinks he is. So, not going to give anything away here, but the middle of this thing, like, really shocked me. Because kind of changes perspective. And then you have like a whole witchcraft storyline in here. And this wasn't really slasher-like, because it was more like witchcraft. But I really did enjoy the story, and I'm looking forward to more from this series. I know it's the very first one, but if you like Fear Street or Goosebumps, You will highly enjoy this. And it is very easy to read. I mean, this is only like 301 pages. I know I wanted to get it done before I went down to Branson, but it just didn't happen. So I finished it. So there you have it. Those are the 10 books I completed in August. Lots of genre-ridden fiction here. Whereas The Crow is graphic novel and Hearts in Atlantis is more like literary fiction. The rest is just pure horror. Kind of. But it was a very decent reading month, and September will definitely be a very cool reading month. So I will film my September TBR for sure tomorrow. I'm waiting on a package to possibly show you the book that I do want to read. But more on that later. I'm going to go ahead and close out this video, and I'll see you in the next video, which will most likely be the movies I watched in August. So, doing things a little bit differently around here, because I would have already had my September TBR posted, but I digress. But the next video I'm going to put out is going to be this one and my movies I watched in August. But I will also film my September TBR tomorrow. And Friday as well. I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and maybe go see Beetlejuice. And I'll probably watch the original one tonight or tomorrow. I'm on the fence about this one because I've never really watched Beetlejuice all the way through. Just come at me. But I still think Tim Burton is kinda weird. But more on that when I do decide to do that. But other than that, that's all I got for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios. Peace.